Thank you for tuning in to No Sudden Moves Radio. And remember, stay on the proven path so you don't risk falling behind. Here at Business Legends, we don't overthink it. Look around and see what everyone else is doing. If it's working for them, it will work for you.
Welcome to Wait It Out, where we believe there's no reason to act now. The opportunity will still be there when the timing is better.
The age of disruption isn't coming, it's here. And the boldest move isn't following the crowd, it's following your why. I'm Patrick Ledden, and you're listening to Disruption Lab. Hello and welcome to the Disruption Lab podcast. My name is Patrick Ledden, and each week I have the opportunity to sit down and talk to someone who knows a lot about disruption, all with one thought in mind: to help you on your journey in life to deal with the many disruptions that might come your way. Let me read you the bio of who I'm joined by today. Today's guest is someone who understands disruption at a personal and professional level, and she helps others navigate it every day. Lori Béen is the owner of Panache Career Coaching and a certified transformational and leadership coach with 25 years of experience guiding people through meaningful career changes. She's also the best-selling author of Purposeful Branding and has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, the Huffington Post, and Inc. Lori has a gift for helping people. You're going to soon figure that out. Get unstuck, tap into their unique strengths, and move forward with purpose. Lori, welcome to the podcast. Thrilled to have you here today.
Thank you, Patrick. I'm thrilled to be here too. I really appreciate you having me.
I think we're going to have a really important conversation. You know, the podcast is about disruptions, and sometimes we talk about what's going on with AI, or we talk about many things that are almost out there. In this particular case, we're going to talk to something that's very much personal for folks, very much things that they're dealing with, whether they're wrestling with a change in career that they've decided to kind of thrust upon themselves, or maybe one that showed up that they didn't quite expect. As we do that, I would imagine you deal with people who find themselves stuck. In fact, some people listening to the podcast right now might feel a little just stuck in their career. What are some signs that might suggest, hey, maybe you need to take a look at what you're doing right now and maybe even need to disrupt yourself a bit?
Yes. Well, of course, one of those signs is the feeling of being stuck or feeling drained. And another thing that I find with clients, if they don't enjoy at least 60% of their job, that's kind of a red flag. No one's going to enjoy 100% of their job 100% of the time. But if you can say you enjoy 60%, you're in a good place. But if you can't, then that's a sign or an indicator as well. Also, as we go through our career, we change in our life and our life roles change. And so our values tend to change. Typically, our core values stay the same. But when we find ourselves, at a different stage in life, some values do change. For instance, if you started off in your career with the goal of climbing the corporate ladder, but then you have kids and you want to have time to see them grow up, those values tend to change as well. And so you might find yourself in a different stage of your career of wanting to do something different and disrupt what you've been doing. Also, craving more freedom or fulfillment, that is an indicator. Or you've outgrown your role. Maybe you're bored or you're no longer challenged. So that's another indicator as well. I have a lot of clients coming to me feeling that way. For me personally, when I decided to leave my full-time job with benefits as a college career advisor to start my own career coaching business, it was because I felt like one of my strengths was being stifled, and that was my creativity. So if you're finding that your strengths are being stifled or squelched, and you're not able to work to your strengths, that might be an indicator as well. Also, staying for the wrong reasons. If you're only hanging out there for a paycheck or the perks, or because it's what you've always done, it might be time to ask, what's the cost of this? What is it costing me emotionally, creatively, or even spiritually? And I will say this, it's not necessarily that you have to change careers or change jobs for disruption to happen. most people don't have the luxury to change jobs immediately. So I don't just help people in finding new careers, new jobs when they are experiencing a disruption, but I also help them make positive changes in their current job.
And so those positive changes, to stick with that for just a moment, is that sometimes just almost a shift in mindset, like how we're seeing something? Because that analogy that people use sometimes where it's like we can look at the same vase of flowers and see and describe something very different. One perspective will change. All of a sudden you see a lot more carnations than roses type of thing. Do you sometimes help people kind of turn that vase a little bit and see the glass half full?
That's just the beginning of it.
Okay.
So yes, a mindset, change in mindset, obviously, change in attitude is part of that. But it's also, okay, what practically can you do? What kind of conversation can you have with your current supervisor to see what kind of changes can be made? That's a win-win for, the company and for you. That might look like volunteering for a project that will help you build a skill set that you don't have and you want to have, or it might be talking about a possible promotion or pay raise or something that has to change for you to feel like it's worth staying there.
Do you think there's sometimes where there's people where there's a pattern of they don't like something, they don't voice something, so they just leave and quit, as opposed to saying, like, actually, if I shared what I want, my boss or whatever you call the person you report to might say, I didn't know you were interested in that. Absolutely, it needs to be done. I mean, is there some of that kind of disrupting yourself where you start to realize, hey, maybe I'm the common denominator here?
Yes, you want to make sure that if you're going to leave your job, that you're running to something and not from something. And you'll
Mm.
probably hear me say that more than once in this interview. But I do have a good friend, and she was a client who she had gone into project management because that was one of her strengths, and found herself in her current, well, it's not her current job anymore, but found herself in her job of project management, just answering emails all day. She's like, this is not why I got into this. It's not what I wanted to do. And so instead of her jumping ship from her company, I worked with her and we figured out a way to have a conversation with her supervisor. And now she's in a much better role, much better fit for her at her same job, at her same company. And that was great because she loved her company. She really didn't want to leave the company, but she did want to do something different.
Okay, so I'm not going to ask you to give away your services for free, but help us understand, like, what does that conversation look like? If a listener to the podcast is right now going, yeah, I'm kind of looking over to this other job opportunity, but I'm not running toward it. I'm running away from what I have right now. Maybe I need to like have the tougher conversation that might lead to something really cool because maybe they like the culture, maybe they like a lot about the role, or about the company, or about the organization, or about the overarching mission, but maybe they feel like they're not positioned in the right job. And then before they do that, maybe there's benefit, you say, from having a conversation. How can I give me some pep talk here? Help me figure out how I have that conversation because that could be really tough.
Right. Well, one of the things is you want to stick to facts and not feelings in those conversations, because facts is what really it matters and when it comes to business. But if you can look back, spend time looking back over the past 6 months to 12 months of how you've made a contribution, but where you can also maybe make more of a contribution with your skills, showing how you can impact the bottom line of the company, and how, again, it's a win-win for not just you, but for the company as well. And that's when your supervisor is probably going to be more open to this type of situation, this type of arrangement.
Do you think we're in some ways, or not we're, me and you, but just like the world sometimes selling people a bill of goods when it's like, oh, you need to be 100% thrilled with your work. You need to be passionate about every aspect of every task that you do. And if you're not, you deserve to go someplace else because you said 60%, and 60%, that's north of 50%.
Right.
And I mean, sometimes you just have to knock out a task that you might not really love, but you get to the other stuff as quick as you can. I mean, do you feel like there a disservice to some degree out there?
Yes, I think so. I think that word passion is often misused. I think the word passion has a lot to do with the word patience, and that word also has to do with being willing to suffer for something. So if you're really passionate about something, that means that you are going to make some sacrifices. It's going to require a little bit of suffering on your end to have that payoff in the end. So thinking that it's going to be, oh, you're going to love your job all day long, everything about it, and if one incident where you're just not happy means, oh, you've blown it or you got to quit and find something else, that's not realistic.
So how important are words that we hear oftentimes like passion and purpose when it comes to our career?
Oh, very important. I mean, I think defining terms is always important when you're having a conversation. So making sure you understand those terms. And then also, what does passion mean to you? Just like what does success mean to you? What is your own definition of success? Because that is different for different people. It might be that you are creating opportunities for income that's not capped, or it might mean just having freedom to be able to make your own schedule. So it's different for everyone.
Yeah, it really is. In the book that James Patterson and I have coming out in September, Disrupt Everything, we talk about the idea that in order to live a good life, you have to first define your good life. And
Mhm.
then and for us, that's it's a really heavy topic, but we spend a very little bit of time in this particular book talking about that. We spend a lot of time talking about, and then you have to live that good life in the face of all the disruptions that are going to come your way. I think you're a great person to help us think a little bit more about living that good life in regards to defining it as well. I mean, do you find that there's people that they're just almost like, they haven't really taken the time to think about what they're really passionate about. They haven't really thought about like, why am I on this earth, or what do I want this role, or what kind of contribution do I want to make, or some of the bigger questions that it can be a little scary sometimes to tackle, but they're pretty important.
Yes, definitely. And that's why I wrote my book, Purposeful Branding, because in it, it has a lot of questions. It's kind of a guided self-reflection process to help people through that and knowing, some people don't even know what questions to ask themselves, much less how to answer them. So knowing the questions to ask are very important. So I have that as one of several exercises in my book to guide them through that process. And I think too, thinking about purposeful brand as opposed to personal brand. And
Mhm.
we'll probably touch on this a little later too, but personal branding I'm not a fan of that term just because it really does focus on the self, whereas purposeful branding focuses on how you can best serve others with the unique blend of passions, talents, gifts, skills that you have.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about that. And I'm excited if people pick up the copy of the book, pick it up in triplicate, give it to some friends. Yeah, when you think about like this concept of purposeful brand, first of all, when you're talking to people about it, does it catch them off guard? Are they kind of like, do you mean personal brand? What do you mean? Or how do you define that term and help them understand and get their arms wrapped around it?
Yeah, I don't really have a lot of people that catches them off guard, but they might say, "Oh, I've heard of personal branding." I'm like, "Well, this is how it's different, how I just explained." It is definitely something to think about in terms of, it's not just about you. And I tell people that about their resumes. I think that's where people really get thrown off. And I say, "Guess what? Your resume, it's not about you. It's about what you can do for the company." And they're looking at it from that perspective. What can you do for us? So that's something that kind of takes the same concept, but with how you can best serve others in a way that you want to serve others, in a way that you're designed to serve others, and in a way where they can see, oh, she or he fills this gap for me and fills this void that I have in what I'm trying to achieve.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, right? Because I'm sitting there looking at a slew of resumes, and ultimately, the ones that weren't weeded out by some machine somewhere because they didn't have the right keywords. Ultimately, if I come down at the end and I'm looking at these, I'm looking like, how does this help me fill my need? Or if I'm the hiring authority, or if I'm in recruiting, for example, I'm thinking, will this person be here in 90 days? So I get my bonus or incentive. And in doing that, I'm looking like, do they really fit the need in the organization? Or is it a lot of I guess kind of maybe even braggadocious at sometimes, but certainly help, maybe some really interesting information, but it doesn't connect to what we're trying to do. Now, you've spent time at the university setting, you said, and then over the course of time, you pivoted in your business these days. You're focused predominantly mid-career or career transitions. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. I
What,
work.
what what did you see the difference between the students and the people who've been out in the workforce for a little while?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. The students are bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. They're excited. They're not jaded yet. And so they haven't experienced the kind of burnout that someone who's been doing something that they really aren't cut out to do has experienced. But I will say, too, the difference is a lot of college students might be succumbing to pressure from parents of what they think they should do for their career. I had that pressure a little bit when I was choosing a major in college. Everyone in my family had an opinion of what I should major in, and it was all something different from what I wanted to major in. But I knew me. I knew I would not make good grades if I wasn't majoring in something that I wasn't interested in. And I think that has a lot to do with, our job choices too. We're not going to do as well, and we're not going to succeed as well in a job that we just don't enjoy. It's not a good match for our interests.
Yeah, I've been in a lot of those conversations with students on the teacher side
A
at the
lot of that.
university, right? Where it's well,
Yes.
it's kind of in my capacity there, it's not necessarily my role to fully help them think about their careers, although I try to. But there also is hey, I've been a mom and dad or a dad, and I've had kids in college, and I may have some expectations or hopes for them, I should say. But the reality is that, like, am I always listening to what they want? And at the same point, with the students in my classroom, am I helping them figure out like where they want to go and what they should do in life, and putting their parents' voices, keeping them in a conversation, but not letting them dominate too much, perhaps, because ultimately, like you said, they know themselves. And now they may not have spent enough time self-reflecting, but the more time they spend doing tools like you talked about in your book, that
Mhm.
allows people to get some really good insights. Have you found that true as people have the book in their hands and they're using it, that the questions you ask, the tools that they're using, that they help them think through some of these challenging decisions?
Oh, definitely. Because I assign that book as homework for my clients, and they'll come back to me with feedback and say, wow, that was a lot to think about. And some of them have said, those were really hard questions, but they're like, it was really good. It was really good for me to sit down and think about these things. And it's questions that they can use throughout their career, and sometimes even not just for their career, but for their whole life. I mean, it really is more of a holistic approach to their career development.
Yeah, because that's one of the challenges. I remember reading a book years ago. It was called like "Don't Check Your Brain in the Parking Lot," and it was the idea of sometimes people feel like they come to work and they kind of leave their brain or even leave a big chunk of their life out in the parking lot, and they come in and they just do whatever they need to do to fulfill the job. And I would imagine that's not always that fulfilling to necessarily do it that way. Recognizing, okay, there's going to be 40% maybe that sometimes I don't want to do, but that 60%, I hope it really does kind of fuel me.
Right, right. I mean, you want to make sure that, if you are working towards a career goal, but you want to make sure that it is a career goal that matches your interests, your passions. You don't want to, for lack of a better phrase or analogy, you don't want to be climbing a ladder leaning against the wrong wall.
Yeah. Yeah. So we were talking earlier about somebody who they might be running away from something, and as opposed to running towards something, and through conversation and assistance to help them think it through, you help them have some of these kind of courageous conversations, let's put it that way, or even sometimes not even that courageous. They need to go have the conversation, and they find themselves in a better stead, a better situation, a different role that really allows to tap into things that they're really passionate about and feel like they're giving a great contribution. What about folks who are on the other side? Let's say they listen to this right now. They're like, all right, Lori, I had that conversation, and my boss promised me XYZ and it never happened, or my boss said that's great, come back in a year, or whatever it might be. Whatever it is, they're feeling at this point, okay, I need to find something to run toward.
Right.
Uh, you know, there's so many, the good news, bad news is there's so many opportunities and different things you can do, right? I can be a solopreneur. I can go out and have 15 different gigs in the gig economy. I can try to join another, I can do lots of things. And that's great, but it's also could be probably paralyzing sometimes, where it's like, I don't know what to do and what the right fit is. I mean, how do you help people kind of figure out, okay, where should you land next?
Sure. So that's one of the main things that I do with clients. And part of that includes helping them determine, okay, can you stay long enough in your current job to start creating an exit strategy? Or do you feel like you're at a point where you got to get out now? And I have, clients on both sides of that. Some who are just, so burned out and so um, just they've waited too long. And so that's something that we work through. Okay, what can we do to help you bridge that gap between now and your next opportunity? And it might be testing out a side hustle. It might be finding a stepping stone job. It's not your next forever job or best job or favorite job, but it's a job that's going to get you to the best job that you want. So there's a lot of working through all of that, depending on, the client. Everybody's different. And that's why, my services are really tailored to the client, because everybody's situation is different. Like, yeah, you're going to have your standard, okay, helping them with their resume, help them with preparing for interviews. But the program is designed to be flexible enough to tailor the services to each client to, okay, how do I have a conversation about leaving my job? Or how do I have a conversation with my spouse about leaving my job? Not just with my supervisor, but with my spouse. Are they supportive? Are they on board? Because that's important as well.
So I want to circle back around as we get toward the end and ask you more about your services and also how people can contact you. But also, if they're just looking at other services, like what should they be looking for? Like, what have you learned is like separates the wheat from the chaff as far as providing really good support to folks. So before we go there, though, what are some of the things do you think that might be keeping somebody from making that move in regard to, I can imagine financially, there's
Mm-hmm.
certainly that component, or in our world, how benefits are tied to, having a job, healthcare benefits and other things. So there's certain things like that. But is there other beyond financial, are there other things that sometimes keep people locked into something, whether or not they realize it or not?
Fear. A lot of it is just fear, fear of risk. Well, and it's really having to define what the fear is. It might be fear of risk. It might be fear of failing. It might be fear of, what others might think of them, or like you said, losing some financial stability. But once you can name that fear, then you can address it. You can't expect to not have any fear. I think a lot of people think, oh, well, I could do this if I wasn't afraid. Well, the fear is inevitable. It's always going to be there in some way, shape, or form. It's how you learn how to deal with it and to become less intimidated by it. And part of that is by naming that fear and then also breaking it down. A big career change could feel really overwhelming and scary when you're trying to figure it out all at once. So you want to break it into smaller, more manageable steps. You've heard the phrase, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So then asking yourself, okay, what's one tiny action you can take now, either today or this week, that can help you take a step forward? What's one small step you can take now? And then also getting support either through a coach, a mentor, the encouragement of a family member, and then reframing the fear and the risk, asking yourself a few different questions. One, am I more afraid of things staying the same? Or what's the risk of staying where I am? Or what would be the best case scenario instead of focusing on the worst case scenario? And then also trusting what's pulling you. Like if you feel that nudge or that push or that pull of something else, pay attention to that. That's your purpose trying to help you get your attention.
Do you think we sometimes will just stick with the devil we know as
No,
opposed to the one we don't know?
oh, absolutely, for sure. And I would say comfort isn't the same as fulfillment, and
Mm,
settling isn't the same as stability.
that's really great insight. So, how about this? Maybe I decide I'm going to make the leap and move to a different role. There's that conversation I'm going to have, or series of conversations I'm going to have with folks, other than just ghosting, which is not a great move. So, if I'm going to leave and exit in a good way, how do I leave and not burn the bridge, but actually kind of maintain that open door or potentially future open door relationship with somebody? Because at the end of the day, the world's kind of small in a way.
Oh, yes, it is. So that's a great question. I think first and foremost is leaving in the way that the company wants you to leave, following their policy. I know for me, when I left the university I was at, um, they require a 30-day notice for those who are on salary. And I wanted to honor that in case it failed and I wanted to come back, because they require that 30-day notice if you want to come back and work there ever again. Not that you have to give 30 days, but they expect 2 weeks at least but 30 days if you ever want to come back and work there again. So I gave it 30 days, just as kind of a safety net in case I wanted to go back there. Even though my supervisor was like, well, you don't have to give 30 days. You can just do 2 weeks. I said, no, I'm going to give 30 days because I wanted to protect myself too in that. So I think honoring that, doing it the right way, and that's just really how that starts. That whole process starts.
So we're kind of talking there as you were going through. It's like, how do you finish like a pro,
Mhm.
leaving a role, which makes me want to go to the whole other side of the situation. So I leave the organization that I'm at. I have that conversation with my boss to kind of see if there's a way to kind of make this position work more
Mhm.
effectively or find a new role, assuming that my values align with where the business organization is going. And maybe that doesn't work out, but I'm the stand-up person who has that conversation. I owe it to myself too, and I owe it to them. And then from there, I start to look for other places. I realize, okay, I really actually want to go this direction. I better understand myself, and I've had some encouragement along the way. I leave well. I
Mhm.
leave like a pro. How do I start the new role like a
Yeah.
pro? Because I would imagine that many of the stories you hear from people about their exit from an organization began a long time earlier when they entered that organization.
Right. Now, that's a great question too, because, working with my clients, once they find a job, we don't stop there. We prepare them to hit the ground running and to come in and make a good first impression, especially in that first 90 days, and to prepare themselves for promotion, hopefully within 12 months. And one of the things that I think is important to do is when you start a new job is try to get a meeting with the CEO, because it's a lot easier to get a meeting with the CEO when you're a new person, because you're saying, hey, I'm really wanting to learn more about this company. I want to meet more people. It's going to feel a little weird and sound a little weird if you wait till you've been there a few months to ask for that meeting. But you may or may not get the meeting, but I think it's always a good idea to try to get that meeting in the start, because that's the easiest time to get it and it makes the most sense.
Well, I could definitely see if you're there for a while and then you start asking for it. There might be some people who throw some roadblocks in your way simply because they want to know, why do you want to go have that meeting? What are you going to say about me in that meeting?
Yes, yes. So this is the great time to try to ask for that meeting. It's also in the early part of the job is trying to find a mentor, someone that you feel like, and so that takes time though. You have to understand that. And you just don't want to walk up to someone and say, "Hey, I want you to be my mentor." It's got to be a mutual thing. So you got to really, learn as much as you can about people. Go out to lunch with different people, to figure out, okay, who do I see here that has great potential for being a mentor.
Oh, that's so helpful. Well, as you were going through that, obviously you hit on a number of things that you do with your clients, and people listen to podcasts like this will listen literally around the world. So I want them to call you. I want them to work with you. I want them to learn from you. But some of them might be like, it's just not in the cards right now. If nothing else, Lori's bandwidth is only so wide. So, but call her first. But anyway, if they call you or they call someone else, like what should they be looking for in a career coach? What should they be looking for in someone who will help them kind of navigate sometimes treacherous waters?
That's a great question. One of the things I think that makes me different, and this is just a personal preference thing. I don't do a lot of career assessments with clients, especially not in the beginning. Other career coaches might start with that first, and some people like that. But for those who don't, that's kind of where I am. And the reason why I don't is because a lot of my clients are coming to me mid-career. They've been doing something for a long time that they're trying to get away from. And if they sit down immediately and do a career assessment, they're typically going to answer with that lens on, and they're going to get results that say, hey, you ought to do the thing that you're trying to get away from, which can be really discouraging. So that's something to pay attention to. If you're being bombarded by a battery of tests and that's all that's being offered, then obviously
Hmm.
that's a little bit of a red flag. But you want to look for someone who is a good listener, someone who cares, has your best interests at heart. You want to look for someone who is knowledgeable, who's maybe been through several different job markets. I've been doing this for over 25 years. I've seen a lot of different job markets, including a recession and a pandemic. So someone who's experienced and been doing this for some time.
Oh, that's such great insight. So, as we wrap up, I would love it if you'd be willing to share. So, I'll give you a moment to think about this one as I position it. That I guess a little bit of hope for folks. Maybe they're feeling a little bit like, hey, maybe they're having a big disruption at work, where maybe some choices are being forced a bit upon them. Maybe the job is going away, or the business is closing, or whatever it might be. Right? They could be very big disruptions, but there could also be the moments where they're just, even in their own mind, they're feeling like, I need a change. I need to do something different. I need to go in a direction. What would you share with them from your clients, and not sharing any particular one? I understand we want to be, recognize that and be, guard those relationships, but somebody who went through that and landed in a much better place. Can you think
Oh,
of a client that's gone through that cycle to help people realize the value of doing it?
yes, yes. Well, I've worked with a lot of clients who've been laid off, and their companies have actually paid for the services that I provided them. So if you're ever in that situation, always take advantage of any kind of outplacement counseling that your company provides for you. You'd be surprised at how many people don't, but the ones who do have talked about how great it has been for them. But I did have a client who he wasn't laid off, but he was in the situation of coming home every night from his corporate job in logistics that he hated. He did not love 60% of it. I don't even think he loved 20% of his
Maybe,
job.
maybe not even 6% of it. Who knows?
Maybe not even 6%, but he would come home every night. He told me, he's like, I would end up in the fetal position on my couch near tears, knowing I had to go back the next day. Like, well, that's not good. And so,
Was he like, is this normal?
yeah, I was like, this is not normal.
Yeah.
It's not healthy. And so I started working with him, and his true passion was drawing and art, but specifically animation. And after working with him, he started following the advice I'd given him, and it was something that happened over time, because it's not going to always happen immediately. Sometimes it does for some clients, sometimes it doesn't. But for him, he made a career change over time from learning his craft, honing that craft that he was already had some raw talent with, and doing side hustles and diversifying his income streams to help support that, to where he got to the point where he felt like he was at a point with his talent where he could do some full-time freelancing, and then the full-time freelancing turned into working full-time for an LA-based animation studio, creating animation for TV shows, broadcasting on CBS and Paramount Plus. And I hear from him quite often on how things are going and how much he loves what he does, and that's so fulfilling to me.
Where are you at? That's an amazing story, and I would hang on to that type of thing because that is so fulfilling. Where are you at these days, Lori, on the 60% scale?
Me, oh gosh, I mean, I feel very blessed. I would say I'm about 90% happy with what I do. Again, it's never 100%, 100% of the time, but there are days where it feels like 100%. And I think part of that is because it is something that is my purpose. I feel like I'm definitely working in my purpose and using the God-given skills that I've been given, and the talents I've been given.
Well, as we wrap up the conversation, I decided not to enter by saying how long I've known you for, but I've known you for a number of years now. And I thought if I started with that, it kind of like sets the seed, like, oh, who knows what about how the conversation is going to unfold. But if I
Right.
just kind of if I let it sit there at the end after people hear the stories and the insights and what your book teaches and how you provide services to folks and the story, even the stories at the end there about how people kind of found a better place for themselves, all of a sudden when I say, oh yeah, and I've known her a long time, you can trust her, it just has a very different meaning to it. So
I
Lori,
appreciate that.
I have known you a long time, and I appreciate having you in my world. And I encourage people to pick up a copy of your book. I will put it in the notes, folks, so you can find it. Maybe get a copy for somebody too in your life who might benefit from reading it as well, or maybe a few copies. And also, if you're in need of some support or some assistance, some guidance, some coaching on your journey, just reach out to Lori. We'll put her link in for her website as well. But Lori, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Patrick. It's always so good to see you. And congratulations on your new book. I can't wait to read it when it's released.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really do. And I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be some 80-90% days for me for sure as we put this
Yeah,
out there.
that's
Maybe
awesome.
even more. But folks, that's all we have for today. Thanks so much for joining us in the Disruption Lab. I hope you found the conversation helpful because so many of us at times can find ourselves a little bit stuck, not sure what to do, a little fearful perhaps, or maybe it's showing up in many different ways our fear is. And people like Lori are great guides to come alongside you and help you think it through. And if nothing else, you owe it to yourself. You owe it to your family. You owe it to your friends. And you owe it to those that you're going to serve in the world to do just that. So that's all we have for today. Thanks so much for joining me. My name's Dr. Patrick Ledden. Now go make it a great day.